Hello and welcome. Today we are going to vibe code a website from zero, and we're going to use a bunch of different tools to do that. I'm going to show you my workflow, and I'm going to explain the different apps that I'm using. We're going to create a simple prompt website where the idea is you can visit the website, you can see some popular prompts. You can upvote, downvote prompts. You can submit your own prompts. And it's like a Reddit or a Hacker News clone for prompts on different platforms. So I guess an example use case would be, I want to see the latest trending prompts for ChatGPT. I'll copy the prompt, paste it into ChatGPT and run it. I'm sure there are plenty of other websites that do a similar thing. We're not trying to build anything groundbreaking here, but I want to show you my workflow, and hopefully we'll have a bit of fun doing some vibe coding. So the tools we're going to use are, we're going to use Claude for just general prompting and ideas. I'm using Claude Sonnet 4 here. We're also going to use probably a bit of Cursor for editing code and fixing bugs, stuff like that. I've broken my rule, which is I've bought the domain name already. I've promised myself I'd never do this because I got into a really bad habit of buying domain names before I'd finished projects and ending up with loads of domain names that I never used. But in this case, with vibe coding the whole app, it's probably only going to take a couple of hours, hopefully, fingers crossed, and we should be able to connect it up straight away. So the domain name is promptfrenzy.com. I'll show you the finished website and link to it in the description so that you can check it out. But yeah, nothing crazy, nothing massively complicated, hopefully. And I'm just going to show you my process. I'm also going to show off a system that I built for documentation because you guys have probably had a similar issue where you're documenting things or you're trying to maintain context between applications, and it's a bit of a pain because you have to copy and paste, you have to drag in multiple files, and keeping things organized can be difficult. So I've created this application, this MCP server called Lspace, and essentially what it does is it connects via MCP to Cursor and Claude and allows you to maintain the documentation as you go. So I'll show you how that works as well. You don't have to use Lspace. This is just, I wanted to use this as an example test case. I'll try and put some time codes in the YouTube video so that you can skip the Lspace stuff if you're not interested. But yeah, it's just a quick way to document things. It creates, or rather I've already created a repo for this on GitHub. And this is where I'll be storing all my documentation and updating things as we go. Okay, so I've got my first prompt here. Like what I usually do is just describe the idea and then get it to summarize it and start to talk about the technologies. In this case, we're going to be using Supabase for authentication and for the backend database. So we don't need to worry too much about documentation. Normally I would describe the different technologies and then get Claude to search for the latest documentation, because the knowledge cutoff means that Claude or other tools will often not know about recent changes or recent updates. So I'll show you a little bit of that process, but the first thing is I'm just going to give this to Claude, see if Claude comes up with any responses or any ideas. And then we can start to think about the next step, which is to start to document or build up the documentation in Lspace. So we've got a summary here of promptfrenzy.com. The core features: user submits AI prompts, text-based with optional images, a voting system for upvotes and downvotes, user authentication via Supabase, a main feed showing the popular prompts that defaults to the last 7 days, time-based filtering system, application-specific filtering with visual pills badges. This is so that we can filter on ChatGPT or filter on VO3 or whatever the prompt is for copy button for easy prompt sharing, and we're not going to build a comment system, but we can add this later on if we want to. Like I said, we're going to be using V0 for the front end because it's got the Supabase integration. That should get us most of the way, to be honest. And then we'll pull it out and put it into Cursor if we need to fine tune or tweak any bug fixes. Here's some suggestions for application categories. We've got ChatGPT, DALL-E, Claude, Midjourney, Gemini, Stable Diffusion. I might change this, to be honest, in the future, but let's stick with that for now. And then the database schema, users table, which we'll need for usernames, etc. A prompts table, yeah, that makes sense. And a votes table, so users can upvote and downvote prompts. That all makes sense so far. So let's start the documentation process. Like I said, we're going to be using Lspace for this. I'll link this in the description, but let's follow the setup. I'm going to pretend that I don't already have this installed, and I'll just guide you through the setup to get started. Like I said, I've already created this Prompt Frenzy docs with just an empty README file or a basic README file. But you probably want to do that in GitHub as well, or you can ask it to set up a local repository, but I'm using GitHub just so we've got automatic backups and I don't need to worry about changing machines, and I can access it anywhere I want. Okay, I'm going to follow the quick start guide on the Lspace server page, my GitHub page. Let's copy the Git clone. I'm assuming that you've already got Node, NPM, and Git installed, but please do that first if you haven't. I've created an empty directory here that we're going to install it into, but you can install it anywhere you like. We're going to clone the repository, and then it'll create a Lspace server directory, which we can cd into. And then the next step is installing everything. So let's do that. Right, and then once we've installed, we just need to build the projects. And that is it from the terminal side. Now we just need to open the Lspace server directory that we've created and set some environmental variables. We need to connect it to our OpenAI API key so that we can use that to build the repository. So let me do that. This is the Lspace server code. I've just opened it in Cursor. And there's two files that we want to look at. One is called env.example, and the other one is config.example. The env example, most of this stuff you don't have to touch. If you want to use a different GPT model, you can change it here, but we're going to stick with GPT 4.0 for now. And then I'm going to copy this file, or rather duplicate this file, or I'll just copy everything and create a .env file here, and then paste it, leave everything, and I'm going to paste my OpenAI key into this file and then save it. Okay, so your .env file should look something like this now. And then if we move to the config.example.json, this is where you can store the repositories that you want to access. So there's an example local one here, but we're going to use the GitHub one. So let's just remove the example local one and give this some details. For this pat alias, we need to get a personal access token, a PAT, from GitHub. If you don't already have one of those, you can go into settings, I believe. Where is it? Settings, there we go. And scroll down to developer settings. And under personal access token, you can select fine grained tokens, generate a new token. And then once you've authenticated, you can give the token a name, and then Make sure that you set an expiration date and give it access to the repositories that you want it to. And then we'll need some permissions. I believe it is, yeah, I just checked my other one here, and we need the read and write for the contents and read and write for commit statuses, and that's it. That just gives it the ability to make commits for you on that repository. And then once you've created it, you'll be able to copy it and paste it into your config file. Let's just call it something else so we know what we're talking about. I'm going to call it GitHub at, and make sure that it matches whatever you reference in here. And then paste your personal access token once you have it there. And you can ignore the path to knowledge base and give it an ID. Let's just call it prompt frenzy docs. But it doesn't worry too much what that is. And then once you've got your personal access token in there, that's the setup done for the Lspace server. Sorry, one last thing, change this to config.local, so it's clear that it's not an example anymore. Okay, and once you've done that, we should have a .env and a config.local.json file in your Lspace folder. The next step is to configure any clients you want to use the MCP server with. So for Cursor, for example, if you go to Cursor settings, there is an MCP tab here, and you can edit your global MCP server configuration here. Let me show you that part in the Lspace documentation as well, because we have examples for Cursor and for Claude Desktop as well. So you just need to find the correct files to edit for Cursor and Claude Desktop. It's easier in Cursor because you can click this button here, add new global MCP server, and you'll just need to copy the format from here, MCP servers, and then you call it whatever you want, and then find the command, which should be your node installation. You might be able to just use node here, but I specified the actual version because I've got multiple versions. And then the argument is the path to your Lspace server. And there's a file here, which is the entry point, Lspace MCP server, which you can see here. So this is all open source, and you can check anything you want. And then once you've added that, you might need to restart Cursor, but you can also restart stuff here. I think it actually picks it up without restarting, but you should see something appear here, and you should have a list of tools here which you can access. And I've done the same for Claude as well. So you can find the Claude MCP server file, and then once you've done that, you'll be able to access the repository in Claude. The way you do that is by going to the Claude settings, go to developer, and then you'll have a list of all the MCP servers that you've configured. Go to edit, and you'll be able to pull up the config file in the same way and edit it as you want. Anytime you update the configuration, just click the refresh icon here, and it will refresh the server, start it again, and it should have access to your MCP server. And you can test it now in a chat, and you can say, please pull up a list of Lspace repos. And it'll have a think about this, and then it'll probably suggest, if it's working, that you call this Lspace list repositories tool. And I'm using my other setup, so I've now got a list of all the different ones, and this is our new documentation. So let's go back into Cursor. Let's go back into Claude and do the same thing here. And here you can see it's got 5 Lspace, and the new one is the prompt frenzy docs, which we'll be using today. So what I'm going to do is ask it to summarize the, so I'm going to say, please summarize my frenzy project and add the documents to Lspace. And this is kind of the power of it. It will, it allows you to add documents to the GitHub repository from an MCP client like Claude, and it will update the repository every time you make a change. So, for example, if I was to change the name to something else, or I was to register a new domain name, I could add that information through the MCP server, and it would then send the document or send the update to Lspace and automatically maintain the knowledge base on Lspace. And just think of it like a automatic LLM-based librarian or project manager who will take information and organize it, push it to the documentation, so you don't have to worry about maintaining this. And normally I would also do this for the different types of technology I'm using. So let's say I'm building a project using, I don't know, WebXR, just to give you an example of something I've been working on recently. I would ask Claude to create a one-page document about WebXR. I would ask it to send that to Lspace. And then when we get to the point where we're building the WebXR part in Cursor or whatever we're using, I'll first make sure Cursor reads the latest documentation so that it has access to the context and the updates and anything that we want to do or to use. So this has worked. Let's go to our test repository. Where did I put it? Okay, and now you can see we've committed this and we've got the overview of the project along with the technology stack, and it suggested some development phases, stuff like this. If you want to know like the history of the project, you've got this timeline file which lists all of the different updates, and also you can see the raw inputs. So if you've added any files specifically, or if you want to see what was submitted from the MCP client, that will be here. And also, because it's on Git, of course, you've got the ability to undo changes or to see what's been created in any given update. So that's all set up now. That's great. The next step is to dive into our front end. So now that we have this documentation, I'm just going to copy this because unfortunately L0 does not have an MCP integration yet. But let's copy this into V0. And let's ask V0, I want you to help me build the front end for this project. And let's see what it comes up with. Okay, interestingly, it tried to pull up screenshot from promptfrenzy.com, but obviously we haven't set this up yet, so it was just a it's just a error connection error message, but it's automatically detected that I want to use Supabase. So let's now connect the backend. Okay, and this has taken me to the create database page. Let's just choose London. But you'd obviously want to choose the one that's closest to you. And then we're going to use the free plan. We're going to call this Prompt Frenzy DB. Yeah, and we're all good. Okay, we're all done. Created the database and we're sent back to V0. So here's where we're creating the database tables. This should be pulled from the, I'm just going to click run code here. This should be pulled from the basic structure that it came up with in the first prompt. but let's see. Yep, that seems to have worked. So now we're diving into some code. It's creating the Supabase integration and types. All right, so we seem to have a simple application. Let's see how much functionality we have. Let's test the sign-in first. Let's just check also what the, so it looks like we've got an authentication. Looks like we've got most of these features. And it thinks it's ready to use. Okay, so it says I should have an email. Let me check my inbox. So we've got this default email template. Let's just confirm the email address. I think we're going to need to copy the link here because it's going to try and take me to some weird website that doesn't work. Oh, maybe not. Let's try it. Yeah, that doesn't work. It's trying to take me to a local host. But maybe it worked anyway. Let's check. Okay, that seemed to work. We seem to have some authentication here. Let's try submitting a prompt. Let's pretend this is for ChatGPT. Some test content. And let's leave the image URL blank for now. Okay, that seems to have worked as well. Let's check that we can copy this prompt. That seems to be working. Yep. And let's try an upvote. Nice. Okay. I wonder if that number is updating. Let's try refreshing this page. Doesn't seem to be updating the upvote count. Let's check that that's actually working. Let's also just check the time range seems to change. We'd obviously need more content to check this. Okay, so next up I'm going to ask it to fill it with some test contents. Please populate the database with some test contents from different times so we can test the date filtering. Okay, so it's come up with this test data. Let's try, once it's finished this, let's try running that and seeing if we can populate some content. And that, and we got an error. So it looks like there's a foreign key constraint that we need to fix. Okay, that one seems to have applied this time. And it looks like we're updating some of the components to enhance the user experience, whatever that means. Okay, we've added some new features, some sorting options, user profile page, prompt detail page, better data handling. Okay. And it looks like we've got some test data here now. It didn't, okay, we've got some stuff from looks like last week. So let's try these date filters. If I do the 24 hours, yep, that seemed to work. Okay, that's good. We have some numbers here for the number of votes, but it's obviously asking me to. Okay, I've signed in. Yeah, that seemed to work. The number still didn't change though, so let me just refresh and see if that has changed. It's at 22, and it didn't go up. So let me just try another one. It seems to have saved my the state of the button, but that 13 is still 13. So that seems like it could be a bug. Let's test that. When I click the upvote button, the button state changes, but the number of upvotes stays the same. Could this be a bug? Let's see what it says. Let's also check the application filtering. Let's filter on Okay, we'll just wait for it to do this change first. Yes, that's definitely a bug. The issue is that we're storing the vote counts as static values in the database, but we're not updating them when users vote. Okay, so it seems like maybe we need to recalculate the totals. Okay, it seems like it thinks it's fixed this issue. Let's double check. We need to sign in again. Let's choose one of these. It seems to have removed the vote counts, I guess because that was dummy data, but let's see if this number changes. Advanced data analysis helper, let's try that one. Okay, yeah, we seem to have got some upvotes now. And what happens if I remove, let's say, the test prompt? Yeah, okay, that's gone down to 0. And we seem to be correctly ranking these. What happens if I downvote? Okay, -1. Perfect. Okay, that seems to be working now. Looks like we can sort by newest, trending, and top rated. That makes sense. I don't know how this trending filter works, but let's not worry about that for now. The main thing is we can submit prompts and they are being updated. Let's try submitting a prompt with an image now. So with an image, and let's select Dolly, and what's the prompt? Let's just say a cute bunny rabbit. And let me find a picture of a cute bunny rabbit. Okay, I tried it with this URL and it seems like we're frozen on the submitting state. So let me try and debug this a little bit. I tried submitting a prompt with image URL, but it seems to have frozen on the submitting. Okay, so it's checking the submission logic for a missing field validation. This could also be a Supabase issue. So one thing we can do is also check the Supabase dashboard. We can look in our prompts table. This is all the test data. Yeah, it looks like the image one was not added. We don't have any image URLs added here. So let's go back to V0, see what it says. Better error handling and debugging. The issue was likely caused by, so I don't know if it did actually find this issue. Let's test it again. Submit a prompt, test image, Dolly, and let's give it test prompt, and then give it the JPEG image, submit prompt. It says that was successful. Okay, let's see if we can see it. Yeah, there we go. There's our bunny rabbit. Beautiful. Okay, so I think we actually have all the functionality now. Let's double check that we're copying the right bit here. Yep, that's the prompt. Fantastic. And if I want to filter on Dolly, yeah, okay, everything's working great. I don't know how much of the rest of this has been filled out. Oh, it looks like we can actually update username and an avatar. I'm not going to test that for now because that's more secondary functionality, but the basics seem to be working. The one thing I am going to test actually is I don't actually like the way this looks at all. It's like pretty basic, and the layout is just not really what I was hoping for, to be honest. And if we open it in a new tab so you can see the full size. Okay, interesting. It's not working in the new tab. Let's just double check it's working here still. Yeah, okay. I don't know why that happened. Let's make it bigger here then. Okay, so actually it goes to the left, so it doesn't look too bad. But I like the layout of, I mean, this is just an example. We don't have to use this layout, but I like the layout of Dribble. So what I'm going to do is take a screenshot of this layout and ask V0 if we can kind of try and move towards this a little bit. So I'm going to say I've pasted a screenshot of a website color scheme and layouts I'd like to try out. Can you please adapt my website to follow this? I don't know if this is going to work, but I think it's going to be interesting to see. Normally it's probably better to work on the layout and the color scheme right at the start. So I should have done this earlier really, but if it doesn't work, then no harm done. I'm just curious to see if we can update it this late on in the process. The next steps are you can deploy this directly to Vercel. I don't know how you say it. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to download it and start some editing in Cursor, just so I can show you what the process there is. Because, like I said, I don't like to go too far in V0. V0 is great for setting up authentication and the basics of the database, things like that. But as soon as you want to get into some complex editing or some backend stuff outside of Supabase or APIs, anything like that, I think it's better to do it in Cursor at the moment. So I'm going to show you that process, and then once we've finished it in Cursor, we can push it to Vercel separately, or like from Cursor rather than directly in the V0 interface. Okay, so it's actually done a pretty good job of that, I'd say. We've got much better filtering here. We've got a drop down and we've got the different application filters here. I much prefer this layout. Oh, there's a slight kind of confusion with the top here. I maybe would want the submit button to be on the right. But overall, I'm pretty happy. So I'm going to keep this one instead. It seems to have removed the up and down vote buttons. Instead, it's got just this heart system, which I guess is fine. Downvotes are not necessary, really. Let me just log in and check. So these are the ones I hearted earlier, and yeah, that still seems to be good. Let me try hearting the bunny. Nice, okay. And then the filters, yeah, so this is still ordering by the newest. And let's try last 24 hours. Great. And it's used a bit of the design language here. The pink submit button is much better, I think. Okay, perfect. So next up, we've got a basic template, a basic style that we like. We're able to copy the prompts. This bookmark thing doesn't work, I don't think. So maybe we'll add that functionality in the future, maybe not. But from here, what I'm going to do is download the code and then open it up in Cursor. But first, I'm going to ask V0 just to summarize what's happened and what it's done for our Lspace repository. So can you summarize all the work you've done today so that we can provide an update for our project manager? And what I'm going to do is, with this update, I'm going to put this into Claude, and we're just going to keep the documentation up to date, because when we can come back to V0 and we can always like ask follow-up questions or prompt, but I want to keep context and history and documentation in one place. So let's copy this and go to Claude and tell Claude, here's an update from our front-end designer or developer. Please update the prompt frenzy Lspace repo with this latest information. I'm going to paste our, so on Claude, when you paste, it just appears here, but I'm going to paste that and submit. And then what Claude will do is it'll add this this content to the Lspace, or send it to the Lspace server, which will update our repository, and it should organize it, and it should put these files in like sensible places, hopefully. And it just means that next time we load the documentation using Lspace, we'll have references to anything that's changed in v0 and also anything we've discussed with Claude as well. Okay, perfect. I've successfully updated your approximately Lspace repository. Let's double check that. So let's go back to GitHub and find the relevant repo. Okay, and now we've got the current status MVP complete. It's ready for user testing, and we can see in the, now got a summary file as well. And if we look in the history here, we've got, it's added this documentation, and we've got the raw files as well if we wanted to see the latest update from the front end. Okay, perfect. So the next step is to download, like I said, to download the v0 code and open it up in Cursor. So you can just download the code. I'm downloading the zip file here, and I'm going to open it up in Cursor directly and put it into my code directory. Okay, so now we are in the Prompt Frenzy front-end application that was built by v0. First thing I'm going to do is in Cursor, I'm going to load the context from Lspace because I want to make sure we have the context of what's been updated, where we are in the project. So please list all of the Lspace repos and find and reads the latest updates from the Prompt Frenzy docs repo. I'm using Gemini 2.5 Pro here because right now it has the best context, and it just helps because you don't have to refresh context quite so much. But let me know if you're using a different one, because I'd be interested to hear what other people tend to use. So what we're doing here is the same thing as we did in Claude. We're pulling the repositories from Lspace, and then we'll get it to read the documents in Lspace. Sometimes you have to tell it which documents to read, but because this is quite a fresh repository, it should automatically find the relevant files and read them for us. It's just listing the repositories here. And now it's going to fetch the latest updates from the Prompt Frenzy docs. And I think what I'll get it to do once it's done this is create a README file in this directory so that we can have just a reference for how to start the server and stuff like that. One of the downsides of using v0 is when you take it out of v0, you have to make sure everything's connected properly, which I'll do in a second. But let's just check what it's doing here. Okay, it's reading the Prompt Frenzy docs repository and these two files. It's asking me for confirmation to read the latest file. Okay, so here we go. We've got the, it's read the summary and README files. And now it's going to just give me an update. It seems to understand the tech stack and the next steps. So like I said, let's now create a README file for this repository. I'll just explain that we're in the front-end repository that was generated by v0. I want you to initialize a Git repo for the front end and make the first commits. This is just so we can do versioning outside of v0. v0 does have like a built-in versioning system, but I prefer to take it out and put it into a Git repository locally. And but first, please create a README file with instructions on how to start the server. Okay, nice. That's a very simple README file, but that'll do. So let's just allow it to create the Git repo as well. Perfect. Okay, and now let's start the server and see what happens. I suspect we'll need to add, the environment variables from v0, but let's see what happens. So npm run dev. Okay, so we need to first do npm init. That wasn't included in our README. Npm install. Let's run npm install -y. That should run through and install all our dependencies. I'm kind of surprised that wasn't included here. It looks like we've got a error. So let's just copy this into here and see what it comes up with. That's another thing you'll find when taking code out of v0. Sometimes whatever node version or versions of software that you have may not be compatible. So I often get errors when trying to run stuff locally, but just copy it and into the LLM window here, the chat, and it should resolve it for you. Hopefully this will work. Okay, it seems to have done something. Legacy peer dependencies. So hopefully it's going to tell me to, so we should be able to run dev now, npm run dev. Let's see what happens. Okay, we've started the server on localhost port 3000. Let's check that out. Localhost 3000. Invalid response. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, so we've got like I suspected, we're getting a runtime error. Supabase URL is required. So I think it's trying to pull some environment variables here that we haven't set up yet. So let's go ahead and set those up. Let's create a .env file in here. And then let's find these environment variables, which should be listed in v0. So if you go at the top here to settings, environment variables, you'll be able to see the ones that have been set up for this project. Unfortunately, there's not a quick way to export these that I can work out. So I'm just going to have to manually copy all of these across. Okay, so we've now got our environment variables .env vals set up. I've restarted the server. Let's take a look at localhost 3000. What does it look like? Okay, nice. So we've got the layouts. It's not loading any prompts though. Let's see if we've got any errors. No errors in the console, in the terminal. Okay, I just refreshed and it worked. Not sure why that happened. Let's just try refreshing again. Seems to be working. Let's keep an eye on that. So we have our layouts. We have our prompts here. Let's copy that. Seems to work. We've got this search function, which I don't think will work. But maybe that's a feature we can add actually in Cursor. That's a good thing to demonstrate. Our filters seem to be working, which is great. Let's just check the login. Okay, nice. Yeah, we're logged in and we're able to access the submit form. Okay, so now we have everything set up in Cursor as well. Let's try adding a search feature. So I want to add a simple search feature. I want to use the existing search box at the top of the page, and I want results to be displayed in the main screen, similar to how the filtered results are currently showing. Okay, let's see what happens. Whilst that's running, I'm just going to check. So I'm going to press F12, function F12, and see if we can just check how responsive this site is, because I've not. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. The logo overlaps this a little bit. It's not like fantastic, but it could be worse. I'm still getting this loading issue when sometimes it seems to not be loading the prompts. So maybe I'll just check the network tab, see if we've got any failed requests going here. But it seems to be one of those ones that doesn't happen all the time. Yeah, so this it's taking a while to come back, or maybe it's just not loading at all. I don't know why that's happening. But maybe I'll prompt about that as well. Okay, so let's see, let's catch up. Let me add the search feature, identify the existing search input components. Okay, looks good. Seems to understand the structure. Okay, let's see what it's editing. What I tend to do is just scroll through this and check for anything that's obviously wrong. But to be honest, I'm not going to check line by line what it's doing. It should be summarizing it anyway here. One of the issues I've noticed with Gemini 2.5 is that quite frequently it'll have problems with linting errors, and it will try and fix them and completely fail. If you get to that point where you've tried to fix a linting error and it just completely fails, then a tip that I use is just open up a new chat window using this button, and then change the model to something else, even like one of the cheaper models, or just go to auto on cursor and ask it to fix the linting errors, and it will fix it every time. So I don't know why it's having such problems with that, but it seems to be okay now. So we're editing the header here to, I think, adapt the existing search bar, which is what we asked for. It's fixing some linting issues here. Okay, and I think it maybe did that. So let's go back and have a look. So the search bar is not actually shown when it's smaller. So let's try and expand the viewports a little bit. There we go. Let's see if I can search for test. Okay, that seemed to work. It's very, I guess it's very basic key-based filtering, research. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with that for now. I don't think it's database-based searching. So if we wanted, if we had a large database and we wanted to find stuff, it probably wouldn't do that. I think it's only filtering on the stuff it's pulled from the database already. But like I said, this is a proof of concept, not something that we're going to spend ages polishing. So let's just quickly prompt about this loading issue. Let's just say, okay, that worked great. Sometimes when I refresh the page, I get a loading state, and the prompts don't populate the page. Do you have any idea what might be causing this? And while it's doing that, I'm just going to commit this to the Git repo. What I would recommend doing is, whenever you are happy with the state of the app, or about to make some kind of changes, try and make sure you commit, because rolling things back can get messy if you've not got a commit that you can roll back to. So yeah, just try and keep on top of that, and try to maintain regular commits on your repo, and that way if something really messes up or you go down a path that you want to back out of, it's possible. So what's it saying? There's a common issue in React applications. To address this, I'll modify the data fetching logic. Okay, so hopefully it will come up with something a bit more robust here. Doing quite a bit of refactoring here, so I hope this doesn't break everything. But yeah, Gemini 2.5 Pro tends to be pretty good with this kind of stuff, so I'm optimistic. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, it didn't happen that time, so fingers crossed. There's loads of little display bugs that I would want to fix. Like I said before, there was this, that's broken it. But I think it's still, yeah, it's still putting in this fix. So yeah, like I was saying, there's this gap between Prompt Frenzy and Discover that I don't like. And there's loads of like small, like this is wrapping to the bottom here, small visual bugs that I would definitely want to fix. But overall, it's pretty responsive, which I like. V0 tends to be pretty good at building responsive sites. It uses the ShadCN framework by default, which works pretty well. So they think that, it says that we've got a fix here. I'm not going to test this massively, but it seems to be okay. I'll just refresh it one more time. Yeah, let's hope that's fixed. Cool. Okay, so final step. We're happy with this. We've got all of the features we initially asked working. I want to now do a final update on the documentation, and then actually first we're going to push it to Vercel and get the domain connected. And then I think we're good to go. So let's make let's commit this fix so that we make sure that this code is clean. This Git repo is clean. And then I'm going to ask, actually I'm going to ask the chat to deploy to Vercel. Let's see if this works. It should be, I've got the Vercel command line package installed, so it should recognize that, and it should, I think this is unnecessary, but it's actually asking me to reinstall it. And then hopefully it will just push it automatically. Yeah, so it's just running the Vercel command line. Set up and deploy, yes. Yes. Yeah, I don't think that worked. So let's go to a new terminal. Actually, let's stop the server now. You can just type Vercel. And yeah, let's set it up there. Let's put it in this project. No, it's not an existing project. Yes, it's called Prompt Frenzy. This is the local. Yeah, that looks good. I think it's still building. Yeah, so we can check the deployments. Yeah, here we go. Still building the page. I don't know how it's going to handle the environment variables. Let's see. I think I might have to set those up again, which is a pain, but okay, that's deployed. Let's check the overview page and let's open up the page. Okay, that's worked. Fantastic. So there we go. That's pretty much it. The final step is to update the documentation. So let's do that one more time. Please update both the local README and the Lspace repo with the updates we've made today. And this is going to automatically document basically the changes that have been made in Cursor so that we have everything documented. And then also I just keep a README, like it's good practice to keep a README file in the project as well, just in case we want to have a quick look into what this particular code base is doing. And then, yeah, like I said, the final step is we can connect the Git repository, which I'll do once I've pushed that, but it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. We're going to add our domain here. Promptfrenzy.com. Yeah, we'll stick with the recommended redirects. Let's add it. Let's connect it to the production environment. And then I'll need to go into my domain provider and change this A record and CNAME. I'm not going to do that now. But when I've done that, it will update the domain and we'll be able to view this site at promptfrenzy.com. And yeah, there's loads of like little things we can do to tidy things up. Let's just check on the README file. Okay, it's added some recent developments. That's nice. And let's see if it's pushing to, yeah, now it's adding content to the Lspace repository. That's great. There's loads of little things that we could tidy up. For example, the Supabase integration is going to need to have we're going to need to add the domain name into there to make sure that it redirects to the correct website. And we're going to need to, well, we could change the template email you get when you sign up, for example. That would be a nice quality of life improvement for users. But fundamentally, that's what the project, we've gone from 0 to a fully functioning website with a database, with a authentication, with a basic search, with filtering, with image URL. Another quality of life improvement could be to allow uploads, which Supabase does also allow. There's you can do file hosting on Supabase. So we could have that integration as well. For now, it's just URLs, which I think is fine for now. But yeah, we want to do more testing. We'd want to maybe flesh out some of these features, fix some of these display bugs. But yeah, we've gone from 0 to a functioning website in about an hour and a half in total. Excellent. We've updated this document. So let's do another check of the Prompt Frenzy repo, Prompt Frenzy docs. Let's update, refresh. And yeah, we've got 3 files now. We've got the basic README, which has been updated with some recent updates here. We've got updates from the front end, and we have this summary file. So yeah, my process would be to continue to develop this in Cursor now. Now that we're in Cursor, I'm much more comfortable making features and even visual updates in Cursor. I wouldn't go back to V0 at this point because I just prefer to have more control. And every time we need to push, we can just push to Vercel, and make sure we maintain the Git updates. Let's do that now. It's just updated the README. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, let me know what you think, any thoughts, and hopefully this has been helpful to some people just to see the complete process. Feel free to check out the website and submit your cool prompts. And let me know if you'd like to know anything else about this process or anything that I've missed. And I'll see you on the next one.